What's up, everybody? It is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Musings Podcast studio. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Mr. Chris from Crawler Art. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm here with you. Been
Yeah, always
excited
fun.
about this.
Yeah. I find it's always fun to do these because you're just talking with other comic book nerds about comic book stuff, and that is very
Exactly.
easy and natural. Yeah,
Yeah, very appropriately named podcast, too. Nerdy Musings.
yeah. Nerdy
Yeah,
musings, nerdy
definitely.
crawler. Same. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. It's very, very big coincidence, but I think it kind of just goes with the territory, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. I ran a survey a while ago about like the name and a lot or just the company, and some people commented like, I really don't like the name. I don't like the word nerd, but I do think there's something encouraging about how people like us are trying to like reclaim that word because
Dude, I'm telling you,
yeah, yeah,
nerds rule the world, man. And it's
exactly.
not a derogatory term anymore, so I don't
Yep.
know why people are getting like
Yeah.
people are actually being posers and calling themselves nerds who
Yep.
aren't really nerds. Like it's such a
Right.
cool thing to do now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the emerging poser is like, I want to be a nerd, and those who were bullied for being nerds are so traumatized by the word that they're like, I
Yes,
don't want this word. But it's like people want are passionate about things and
absolutely.
they're nerds. Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can be nerds about multiple different things. Like I'm a jujitsu nerd. Like you don't it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be associated with geeky things, but it's kind of funny how that connotation comes up when you hear that word still,
Hmm.
especially, in our childhoods, or at least in my childhood. I'm figuring I'm decently older than you, but in my childhood, definitely that was a very derogatory term.
Oh yeah. Definitely got picked on for loving comics. And then now it being literally like the most profitable movie franchise is plural in the world.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely some unpacking about that too. Like I had some friends who were like, "Oh, it's for me. These movies are for me, and I don't know why other people are watching them." And then you realize like if other people are falling in love with like Captain America and Wonder Woman and all these characters that I love, like maybe that's just better. And then now we fast forward to our original topic, like now nerds are cool. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
I think that turning point was that first Iron Man movie.
Man, what a movie.
Dude, like that really like set things off, set the wheels in motion. Like I mean there was other, air quotes comic book movies out, but just nothing to that magnitude, and it kicked things off for everything there was to come. Like those first couple of phases of the Marvel stuff were just insane.
Remember, like I vividly remember like being in I think it was Hall H and Downey Jr. coming out and everyone cheering, and I was like, okay, and then we watched the movie and that was good. But for me, I remember when people were like, they're gonna make a Thor movie, but that
Yeah.
guy is like, how's that gonna work? Or they're gonna make a Rocket Raccoon movie? Like, this
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And it was like banger after banger after banger,
Yeah.
you know?
And they
Yeah.
just proved that they could use any material, like even stuff, for us looking at the comics, like maybe stuff that wasn't necessarily that popular, like you're talking B, C, D list characters,
Yeah.
for some people, as far as in their eyes, like everybody thinks of the Spider-Mans and, characters like that, but nobody's talking about Rocket Raccoon and Groot. And it's like I remember James Gunn saying that they knew if they could pull that off and make people enjoy a movie about a tree and a talking raccoon, that they could pretty much make a movie about any of the characters successful.
Exactly. Like it's blows my mind that we have had more successful Groot and Rocket Raccoon content and movies than we have a Green Lantern. Like
Hey,
or like,
I know, right?
Hawk Girl or even Wonder Woman sometimes. You're like, how
Yeah,
did we get here? It's wild.
yeah. Well, Chris, I am really excited to learn more about you, how you started in the comic world, like how you got into comics. I know a lot of people, it's kind of the same story. When we were kids, we were into comics. Like, what comics really struck your interest when you were younger and first kind of piqued your curiosity and sparked that love of comic books?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll start with kind of where I am, like a quick snippet on where I am now, and then we'll go jump back in time. So,
Sounds good.
yeah, right now I am building Nerdcrawler in my free time. It is the easiest way for comic book artists to earn more for their original art and sketches. members of the community include folks like Frank Cho, Sabine Rich, Koi Pham, Ryan Otley, Jim Chung, and a bunch of other really cool names. And it's been a dream because now let's kind of jump back in time. My first memory with my dad is eating a bowl of Frosted Flakes and watching X-Men the animated series, like right
Nice.
before school. Like I was born in '89, so then I think I was probably like four or five, and I just
Right.
saw like cool lights and all that kind of stuff and whatever. And then when I got in high school, I was able to get my hands on, I'll say, files of the show, and I watched them a bunch. And I was like, man, this show is really mature for what it was. But even as a kid, I just like loved that series. And then you kind of fast forward like through big moments in time of like getting my hands on my first comic, which my dad bought me at a comic book store, and it was a issue of Gambit because Gambit is my favorite superhero. For those viewing the podcast, you can probably see behind me a bunch of Gambit stuff.
Yes.
Um,
I
and
spotted that
then
right away. Right
yeah,
away. I zoomed
that
right
was
in on
that was
that.
a for sure moment. And then getting to go to my first convention and getting a Batman sketch by Jim Lee right here. And then that was also the time I got a little doodle from Frank Cho. But it was just so many little moments of like these stories really mattered to me. And then following that dream, it got me like my first real job too. So like I was a junior in college, and I really wanted to get an internship at Marvel. I had applied my sophomore year, didn't get in. My junior year, I took a shot and I actually just like completely redid the cover letter to just focus on like the memory with my dad. And so like most traditional cover letters are like, to whom it may concern, I'm interested in this job at Marvel Comics, blah, 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 blah. This one I started with like, I remember waking up and it was really dark and I walked downstairs and I turned on the TV and the blue lights glowed and I heard da 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 da. And then, and that was a life-changing moment. And then that was what got me the interview, which then got me the job. And then I found out that the person on the other side that was actually reading those cover letters was another intern. And I actually talked to her. She was like, I remembered yours because yours was actually interesting. And so
Oh,
that's
that's
why I pulled you from the
amazing.
stack. But yeah, and then, yeah, I got to intern at Marvel, moved out to New York, and then did a couple jobs and then found my way at Comixology, which was really cool. Being able to work at Comixology was amazing. And then, yeah, that was like the really fast version with some ramblies here and there.
Yeah. So when you interned at Marvel, were you, I'm assuming it was an in-person internship, right? Like
Yeah.
in New York at the main office, like
Yeah, that was, if I remember the street, it was on 5th. I think it was like 38th and 5th. Because I remember we were like 3 blocks away from the New York Public Library. I interned for the X-Men office. So my bosses were Nick Lowe, who's now, I think, head of Spider-Man. Daniel Ketchum, who I think now does a bunch of stuff for like Wizards and Magic the Gathering. Jody LaHoop, who wrote like, I think it was like Man Bear Shark or like he,
yeah, yeah.
Grizzly Man fighting shark or something. Like,
Grizzly man, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and then Janine Schaefer, who went on to like work at like Boom as like VP and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was very lucky to
Wow.
work for them. Yeah,
Well, the reason I emphasized, making sure to ask you if it was at the actual office, like that's becoming more and more rare these days.
yeah,
Like back in the day, people actually had to go in and the artists actually went in and there was like the bullpen
hmm
and all that cool stuff. And if you were wandering around there, you could actually see some of the artists working. And were there some artists there that at the time you were there that you got to kind of see them working, or was this getting more into the age of where people were faxing stuff in and all that kind of stuff?
it was definitely the latter, but it wasn't like fully remote yet, right? So this was probably 2010, the summer of
Yeah.
2010. So there was colorists like doing digital colors and things like that. But a couple of fun jobs that I did, like I had to go drop off papers at Klaus Jansen's apartment,
Oh
or
man.
like take the train to go to like Phil Jimenez's place and like drop off paper. And I was like, this is wild. Like, and so that was really cool. And then you got like cool like guests in the office too. Like I remember at the time, the Old Spice man, like Isaiah something. I can't remember his
Yeah.
last name.
Yeah. I know who you're
But there was
talking
like
about.
chatter that like he might be something. Like I think maybe in the running for like Luke Cage at the
He
time.
was, yeah, he was petitioning hard to play Luke Cage. Like
Yeah.
he's such a huge comic book fan, and I remember he was like posting about it all the time and really
Yeah,
like petitioning to be Luke Cage when they did
he
the
wanted it.
Netflix series. Yeah.
Yeah, so he came in, and I was like, oh, like maybe this is happening. But then it didn't
Yeah.
happen. But so that was really cool. Another like fun random memory, which like I do think there's value in going to the office. We don't need to have a conversation about remote work versus not,
Oh yeah.
but
We're
but
doing
for
a
those
remote
specific,
podcast.
right, like that's fine. But for that, like just so many little things were amazing. Like being able to access the library. They have like literally every comic, like tons of graphic novels. Like I remember Jody being like, "Hey, there's a lot of downtime for this job until we need you. You should just read all of Punisher Max. It's right here." It's like Ennis's run. I read the whole thing at the job. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was like little things like that. Like you can see just original art in a drawer that like Janine had behind her, like a bunch of Jill Thompson pages or whatever. I was like, this is amazing.
That's heaven, right? Heaven on earth.
Yeah, it was so cool. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to comics, have you always been somebody that was more into the art than the story, or was that something that you kind of equally enjoyed both? I know you mentioned with the X-Men, like the story really got you. You were into the story of the characters and everything. And is that something where you kind of balance? I mean, obviously you run a site that is heavily art focused, but talk a little bit about your kind of your interest in the art and the writing. Like, are there any big stories that stand out to you from when you were first into comics?
Yeah. I remember my high school teacher, who was also a big comic book reader, told me most people will start falling in love with the art, and then as they get more serious, they fall in love with the writing because it is such a visual medium.
Yeah.
And I think I was very much the same. Like Jim Lee, like classic X Men from the '90s. Like that was like this is amazing, right? Like I loved Gambit because of the look. I loved how he drew it, the kinetic, like the movement of the stuff. But what really stuck was I remember picking up like 1602, like the Neil
Yeah.
Gaiman like book.
Yeah,
I
that
got
was
every
awesome.
issue, right, and it was like bagged in a set at the comic book store, and I think it was like 30% off or something. And I had just read American Gods by recommendation from my high school English teacher. So I was like, oh, like the same guy. So like, let me read this. And I was like, this story is nuts. Like, this is so cool. And then at the time, I think House of M had like I had read I picked up Avengers Disassembled because I was also like I eventually became an English major, so I thought I would write comics and work in
Yeah.
publishing. But I remember picking up Avengers Disassembled and being like, this is amazing, Bendis's run. And then House of M came out, and so I that was basically when I started to get a pull list, I think. And I was like, I have to go like every 2 weeks and get comics because like House of M was nuts. And then that led into like what I don't know, like maybe just because I'm older now and like my pull list is much smaller, or I don't really have one anyway. But it was like I just went on this run in high school where Marvel was putting out like I think the order was like House of M. Did it go Secret Invasion with
I think
with the
so.
Electra Scroll?
Yeah, I
Then we
think
go to
so.
like Civil War, or no, we had Dark Reign, which
Mm-hmm.
was like
Dark Rain.
a
Yeah.
little
It
soft,
was,
but it
yeah.
was there. And
Yeah.
then we had Civil War and then a bunch of stuff. But I was like, yeah, House of M, Civil War in particular. I think the one that I wish I was reading more of was like just Hickman's like Fantastic Four and then like the Secret War stuff. I read Secret War like as it was coming out, but like I felt like I missed so much context.
Yeah.
And then when I was working at Comixology, one of the perks was you had to read the stuff to market the stuff. I was working in email marketing and all that stuff. So it was a very nice excuse, but then that's when I read like, oh God, East of West, right? That's Hickman, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Right?
believe
And
so.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then yeah, I started reading like a bunch of stuff and I was like, oh yeah, Hickman's amazing.
That's a
Yeah.
perfect segue because, when you mentioned pull lists, like a lot of people today don't know what that is because they're
Yeah.
all digital through Comixology and
Oh, I bet
Amazon
that.
and everything.
Yeah.
So, for everybody listening, like a pull list is when you told the comic book shop, your local comic book shop, like, hey, put these aside for me every week. I'll come and purchase them. And then well, at least some people purchase them. I remember when I worked at the shop, some people's pull list thing was like two long boxes and they never came in and cleared them out. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really changed with the innovations in going to digital and everything with Comixology. I know when there was a shop here called Comic Book Inc. and it was an amazing shop, like just really good people running it, and the owner was amazing. I was actually like went to his wedding. We were like really close friends, and it was just like a second family. And when that went under and shut down, I was just so heartbroken. It's like I'm not gonna go to a shop anymore. Like I can't go to another shop. And that's when I switched to getting my stuff through Comixology on my iPad, and kind of until recently have been doing that ever since. I recently started collecting again, which is dangerous. But Comixology really like changed the game for everybody in that regard. What was your you said a little bit with email marketing and things. Was that kind of your main area of focus when you were working there?
Yeah, so I was hired to do like email marketing and like help us migrate to a new email system. And then eventually over the kind of two years I was there, I expanded into like just broader marketing and customer acquisition and stuff like that. For those who were big Comixology people, you might remember there was like a refer a friend program. Like I helped onboard that.
Okay.
Um, but then basically I was there for a year. We got acquired by Amazon and then I stayed for another year to help with that migration. And then my girlfriend, now wife and mother of my kids, we were talking about like the future and kind of once the Amazon acquisition was complete, um, and like I think it's long enough now. I could probably say like the winds of change were starting to happen.
Yeah.
We decided like, hey, it makes more sense for me to find a new gig, and then the new gig, we also knew that we want to move back to California, and so then yeah, but that you know it was an amazing time. Like I think, and it was a great product. I genuinely think like David and John and Peter made a really great product that people loved. And then another bit about me, Comixology was my second Amazon acquisition. So I had actually worked at a
Okay.
company called Diapers.com, which was like before everything was purchasable online. They were like very much like a Walgreens online, and Amazon had bought them in what is now viewed as kind of a hostile takeover. Like you can Google it at length.
Yeah.
Um, but I had known that experience, but I had joined right after we were acquired, whereas this one, it was like through an acquisition. And so I was like eager to see how that would go. And then there was a lot of support there too. But yeah, yeah, I'll leave it. I'll say we did a lot of cool stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like you said, people can Google
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah.
um, so fast forwarding to modern times, I'm assuming that kind of the move to the West Coast and everything, and the separating from Comixology and all of that kind of led to where you're at now with Nerdcrawler. What were the first seeds of your ideas for Nerdcrawler art and setting up a site like that? Obviously, a love of original art from looking behind you there.
Yeah. I think the most amazing thing that happened with the move was I got this job at an image sharing community called Imager, IMGUR, for it was the largest image host for Reddit, really, before Reddit allowed their own image uploads. And I had working there, I got closer with our engineering team, and there was this guy, Cam, who was one of my best friends, and he on a walk to lunch one day said, like, what are your side projects? And I didn't know what that meant because
Right.
like I never did that stuff. And then he told me like all these things that he was programming in his free time. And then my wife was in culinary school and I was just playing video games like God of War, Red Dead or something. And I'd beaten
Good
them and I
stuff.
thought, okay, I need a yeah, great games. I thought I should also be productive, and so I decided to learn how to program. And then through my relationship with Cam, and then learning how to program through like really cheap tools like Udemy or things like that, I started to like build little apps. And then it took a few tries. Two of them I sold, like four of them failed, but I always like loved comics, as you mentioned, and I had noticed that in the shoe space, there's apps like Soul Savvy and Goat where they will tell you or send you an email when like new Jordans drop or new Dunks drop or whatever, right? And I was like, well, like Capullo grab bags sell out in like 1 minute, and like Paul Smith art is super random. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if like we could get an alert for those things too? Because like that's the stuff I care about. And I think around this time, like PS5s were also like selling out like crazy. And a buddy was like, oh, I built a web scraper for PS5s to let me know when a PS5 drops. And I was like, I'll take that nugget and I'll apply it to Capullo grab bags and Paul Smith art. And I built it, and that's why Nerdcrawler is called Nerdcrawler, because it was crawling the internet for alerts.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
and so I launched it, and I made it for myself, and it was working. And then I launched it in the Facebook groups, like the original comic art collector groups, and it grew to like 400 people pretty quickly. But then it kind of stopped, and I was like, okay, like we're not really delivering that much value, and it was making enough money to cover the server costs, and like I think I was making like $50 net. And I was like, okay, but like that's not enough. And then I, being in this space, you're a part actually of a lot of Facebook groups, and the Big Wow Art Facebook group, moderated by Steve Morger, who's the founder of Big Wow, frequently sells original art on his Facebook group, but he takes bids through like email and Facebook
Mm,
comments. So like if you're not familiar, um, he'll post it and then he'll say like comment the bids, and you can actually see all the bids come in. But I was like,
yeah.
there's got to be a better way for this.
Yeah, no
And
kidding, right?
yeah, so I remember I think he was selling like, I can't remember what piece, maybe something from like Adam Hughes. So I knew it would sell for like over $6,000. And I was like, the current bid was like 1,000. So I was like, okay, I'll bid $1,010, knowing that I was going to lose. But then I could get in Steve's email, and I said below that bid, I said, hey, would you be interested in like a better auction platform? And he said, you've been outbid, and yes. And I was like, that's the nugget.
Nice.
And so then I was like, here are the requirements. Like, would that be interesting? He's like, yep, you're good. So then I built it in like a week, and it doesn't have nearly as many features as it has now, but it was enough for Steve to be like, we're going to try this, because he was raising money for Maui fire charities. And he tried it, and it worked. And there were like bugs and stuff, but for the most part, like people could bid, he got his money, the guy got his art, and it worked. And then it was somehow Frank, the timing was nuts. I've gotten many meals with Frank Cho since then, and I found out that he was interested in selling some sketches to help raise money to buy a house, but he couldn't find the right way to do it. He didn't want to use eBay because of fees and everything. And he had seen Steve using Nerdcrawler, and Frank asked Steve to put him in touch with me, which was nuts because like I have been a fan of Frank Cho for so
Dude,
long.
I have a
And so
funny
then
Frank Cho story I'll tell you after you finish your thought.
yeah. So like basically I partnered with Steve for like a week, and then I don't hear anything from him like 2 months. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this is gonna work. But then I got an email that was like introduction, and it was like Steve Margaret and Frank Cho. And I was like, what is this? And it took a while to get Frank to actually respond back because he's very busy. But
Yeah.
eventually I was like, yes, let's talk. We talked on the phone. We started his first auction, and then it just kind of kept going from there. And like getting Frank and then making him happy, which then led to like getting a bunch of other people happy. And yeah, it has just been a roller coaster ever since.
It's unbelievable. Like when you were listing the artists that you have on the site earlier, you're like listing my all my favorite artists.
Yeah.
Like Frank, Ryan Otley, all of them, Jim Chung, everybody. It's yeah, my Frank story, it was funny one year. I this was back before like he was posting much on Instagram or anything
Yeah.
like that. And I didn't really process, like, I didn't know what he looked like very clearly, enough to know what he looked like in person. So he was at, I believe it was Emerald City Comic Con here in Seattle. And, we went up to his table and he was there, but I didn't know it was him.
Yeah.
Up to his booth, and I was looking through all the art books and gonna get a bunch of them. And obviously, for those that don't know, like we have to tell them that Frank draws very beautiful, curvy women.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of his forte. And a lot of the art books have nudity and stuff in them. A lot of his drawings, and my wife is very supportive. You know, it's art, and we're there looking through these, and he he goes, yeah, he goes that Frank Cho, he goes, that guy's a real creep. He's like a real pervert and all this stuff. And I go, oh man, but I love his work, and you know, this is just for artistic, you know, reference or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, like that's what you told your wife to make her let you buy them or whatever. And then I started to realize it was actually him, and I'm like, dude, I'm such a big fan of yours, and got him to sign everything, and it was a great experience. He's a real funny guy,
Yeah.
very personable, very funny guy, and immensely talented. I have some artwork of his on the other side of this monitor that the camera can't see. Like, and this whole section that probably might be getting cut off on the camera is all Frank Cho stuff over here. That whole square.
Yeah. Yeah. I owe him a ton because, um, when you're trying to build like a business like this, like a marketplace, the first users are the hardest. And there's also this theory where, um, who you bring to the party first sets the tone for the rest of the party, right? And so if I went and got, you know, like up and coming kids, it's a very different experience than getting someone like Frank, right? And having Frank try it, actually like work with me through text messages on bugs he's having and give me the grace to say, hey, you have a bug, but it's okay. Like, we're still doing it. We're still working together. And then just his quotes. And there's a video we're actually cutting that we were able to film in Philly, where he speaks about his experience. And yeah, I'll just say, like, if anyone's trying to build a comic book related business, like getting immensely successful talent and getting them to trust you is the hardest part. But if you can get them to trust you, and trust comes from literally doing what you say you're going to do, which is like you help them make money or whatever,
Yeah.
then you will increase your likelihood of success. Whether Nerdcrawler is successful right now, I don't know. We're growing and it's fun, but like, still got a
I
day job.
think,
But yeah,
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that having fun is such a big part of that. Like I know for me, like I never intended to make a living off of teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I was having fun with my hobby at the time becoming my livelihood and just snowballing into this thing. And I think keeping it fun and doing something that you're passionate about like that, like the rewards start coming in down the road. So I
Mm-hmm.
think keeping that approach, that focus on the approach of having fun and doing this thing that you enjoy is something that will definitely pay off for you. I think it's successful already. Like one of the things that's impressed me the most about what you're doing with it is that when you put on your Instagram like a poll, like, okay, what feature would you like to see? And literally I've commented and you've like messaged me, you're like, okay, it's live. Like an hour later, like, all right, the new feature's on there. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's doing all this himself. Like,
Yeah.
that's really cool that you are that involved to where you're doing the programming on the site features and everything.
Thank you. Yeah. Like you'd watch videos of like Jim Lee drawing or like Frank Show drawing, and they'll say things like, "Oh, I just draw for fun." And I never really got that because like I'd play video games for fun, but like I never would like do the work for fun. But there's something about like programming as a means of solving puzzles, and then when you figure out the problem and then you launch it, and then like someone's actually happy, like Frank's happy, or I just fixed a bug for Sabine Rich like literally 30 minutes before this call,
Oh,
and she's like, "You're
amazing.
amazing." It like that just feels good. Like my really good friend who I owe a lot to as well, Bernard, who passed away from cancer. He um he will always be like a north star in my brain. And one of the things that he would also say, because he was an entrepreneur as well, and he built all these things far more successful than I ever was. Um, and he would say like it's kind of building these businesses is like playing a video game, except the points is money. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, that's funny. And I find that interesting now, which is like when I make Sabine rich, like we got dinner, she was interested, but like you still have to like prove the value. And then she draws something and she put a head sketch up for $80, sold out like that. And then she listed an auction, similar kind of head sketch, starting bid like $50, and it sold I think for like 270. I was like,
Nice.
I literally made her like three times more money. That
Yeah.
feels awesome. Like I literally high scored her, like it broke a record for her, right? And Frank the same thing, and it's like that feels good. And I think I just chase that feeling now of like, and then if they're happy, then maybe this can become a bigger thing. But it starts with like, let's get them like as many high scores as possible. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, it's important, like getting that feedback too, getting those relationships and being able to communicate with them and being very open to adjusting and helping them with any issues that are coming up. Like maintenance of those relationships is incredibly important.
Mhm.
And like you said, kind of I think if you have people like that and you're keeping them happy, like Without a doubt, word's going to get around, and you're just going to see more of an influx of big names coming over there. I noticed that you allow like people who aren't necessarily big name artists to sell stuff on there too, which I think is really cool because I think some of the other sites, auction sites and things like that, wouldn't necessarily do that. So I think it's really cool that you're giving a platform to those individuals too who aren't necessarily big name industry professionals at this point anyway, giving them that
Yeah, thank you.
exposure.
Yeah, yeah. I don't talk about this. I've been thinking about this, and they're in presentations and things like that. But this is probably the first time I'm publicly going to say it, which is I think the bigger vision of Nerdcrawler is that it's a place for creators, right? Like we start with exceptional comic book creators, but like all creators need a way to monetize their work and get paid the true value of their work, especially in the face of like AI just like taking their work and then
Yeah,
monetizing it against their will, right? It's like let's make a place for them to actually be able to sell it, and with things like adding time whenever someone bids, you can make the true value rather than someone sniping it and then relisting it, which was like a pain point
happens
for like Adam
happens
Hughes and all these people
constantly.
constantly, right? It's super
Yeah,
awful. So that has been great, and yeah, like being able to help some of these like like emerging creators, being able to list sketches and make a little bit extra. Um, yeah, it again like high scores for everybody, and I think
yeah,
that certainly like Frank is an anomaly. Like he is a legend, right? And the amount that he commands is much higher. Or like Art Adams, we were literally able to sell a commission spot for him for thousands, and it was wild. But what I'm finding is the inflection point is coming from like Sabine and Ollie Garza and Koi Fam, like folks that are like very good at what they do.
yeah.
Um,
Koi is amazing. Like people don't even
it's amazing.
realize. Like I have a Hulk
Yeah,
sketch that he did for me way back. I mean, like over 10 years ago, and he was amazing back
yeah,
then.
yeah. And I think what he does so well with Nerdcrawler is like it's an avenue for him to put something up like every other day and make a little bit extra, but also then he's finding it like as an outlet to try new stuff too. Like I love when he switches it up and he's like, these next six were all pencils, and then now
Yep,
he's doing a lot more inks. And he's trying different characters, or he was doing some painted stuff, and it's just and then it's a place, right? It's a place for him to sell and earn more, and then also allow fans to buy. And then the cool thing about a marketplace model is that like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so when Sabine joins and she brings her fans, they can also discover artists that they otherwise might not be following, right? And or like one that just signed up and is starting to sell is like Alessandro from Italy, who's repped by the artist bullpen, but he does a couple of sketches here and there, and it's like, yeah, he now gets more exposure, and that is cool. And I feel like that
definitely.
again, like yeah, high scores for everybody. I guess it's maybe like
I
the
love it.
my
That should be
takeaway.
the
Yeah,
slogan.
yeah,
I wanted to touch on that word crawler because
please.
I think those like I used to do web design and stuff back in the day and kind of that was another side hobby that turned into a profession for a little bit. I ran my own little freelance web design thing for a couple of years when I was younger and the term crawler like I don't think a lot of people know what that is. If you've done any kind of basic search engine submission and that kind of thing, you might be familiar with that term. Can you kind of break that term down for everybody and kind of how it applies to your website?
Yeah, yeah. So a crawler is rooted in the idea of like a bot or a spider, right? And so both like a spider on the internet is like this idea that a spider is synonymous with a bot, and the bot spider will visit a website and then scan the page for information, or a synonym for scan in the context of a spider is crawler, right? And so that's kind of how all these words float around. But the idea is that when a company like a Google uh, deploys a spider across the internet, they're able to crawl these websites to understand what's on the page to then allow their search engine to become smarter. And so when you Google something like Adam Hughes art, they have crawled so many websites and content throughout the world that they're able to say, okay, now we know who Adam Hughes is and kind of what we should show. the next important part of a crawler is then to like prioritize and rank stuff. But then, ta-da! Like this is Adam Hughes' website, and we have a little description about it, and all that stuff is kind of gleaned from the crawler doing their job. For Nerve Crawler, when we started, it was again the like, I need to get an alert for Capullo grab bag, and so Greg Capullo's website has a little product, and that product called the Capullo grab bag has some what we'd call metadata, and then a button, and the button will say like add to cart if it's available in stock, or it'll say sold out if it's not in stock. And so a crawler in this context, or will visit that page and look for that little bit of text. And if the text said add to cart, I knew it was in stock. And if it said sold out, I knew it was out of stock. Or for the, what's another good example? Like the Jim Chung example, he would have like 12 pieces of art on his page. And then when the first one changed, then I knew that there was a drop. And so like that is what the crawler was doing, was
That
visiting
would
these
trigger
sites.
the crawler to alert you, correct?
Correct. And then it would notify like everybody who had that crawler active. Yeah. But yeah, so at the time I thought it would be a crawling business, and I even at one point like figured out all these like APIs to like hit to get like big cartel product information and sideshow collectibles and all this stuff. And I had built a fully robust search engine that took like
Right.
a month. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the collectible search engine. And then I was like, nobody wants this. Like I literally tried to promote it and nobody wanted it. And that was a huge bummer. That was a big L. And then that was probably a month or two before the Steve moment. Because then I was like, okay, well, what else could I do? Because I want to just keep playing in this space. And then yeah, and then you figured out like it was a marketplace. Like sellers want to
Yeah.
sell and buyers want to buy, and that was the problem.
So you were just able to kind of dial it in through the input and feedback you were getting and seeing if there was any response. You were kind of probing in a sense, and you did what any entrepreneur does, and kind of course corrected based on the feedback you were getting, and were eventually able to narrow it down to more of a marketplace for artists to get on and get their exposure and get their artwork up for sale, which is what every artist wants. Not every artist wants to go and spend all weekend at a con and stay in a hotel and all these things. Like,
Yeah.
I think, especially over the pandemic, I noticed a lot of artists, even after the pandemic, aren't as active going to cons as they used to be. So
Yeah.
I think having a resource, having something like your site is going to be incredibly valuable for people like that. I know a lot of the older artists have made a decision to not go out as much, and
Yeah.
or just not even to do with the pandemic, but just being, some of them older in general, they don't like to travel anymore. Like I know like Jim Valentino and some of those guys are getting up there, and he doesn't like make appearances or go to cons, and and artists, a lot of the artists I've met are pretty reclusive too. So for a mass majority of them, they don't like being out in public and
Yeah.
interacting with a lot of people. They want to go and put their head down at that art desk and not have to do that. So
Yeah. And I would be remiss in not mentioning another very important conversation, which was with Mike Choi. So I have a couple of Mike pieces. That Ron Swanson right there
I
actually is
love
from
it.
Mike,
I
and
think
and
I
that
own a, is there a print of the Ron Swanson one?
I don't know. It
I don't
might
know if there is.
yeah. But so Mike is very creative, not just in the art side, but like he was trying lots of stuff, and like he was trying to see if he could monetize his Instagram, and so he would lift pieces to try to sell them. But like I bought that for a deal. Like I think he listed started at like $1, and I just
Mhm.
commented $100. And like nobody ever bid, and I was like, "There's no way that this will sell for $100," and it did. And he messaged me, and it's like, "I guess you blew it out of the water." I don't know, and I was like, "Yeah, I guess." But ever since then, like, we have a couple of DMs go back and forth, and he was trying Whatnot, and he was a big Whatnot fan, especially with like Slab Comics. And so when I was starting to build the marketplace thing, I was like, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And one of the things that I kind of learned from it is like, as a buyer, Whatnot was really great for deals, but as a seller, you're not making the maximum because it's like this narrow time. live stream only, hard to discover. You have to be on there, and then kind of gone. And so I was like, well, that's an interesting pain point. And then, so then as I was starting to build Nerdcrawler, the other thing I realized too is, like you said, artists are reclusive. Um, Not every, like, some artists want to do the live stream thing and talk about it as they're drawing and then sell the thing. But a fair number of artists I've talked with are like, can I just draw the thing, post a picture of it, and like walk away? And it's like,
Exactly.
so I took kind of those two ideas and I was like, well, maybe let's try it. Right. And I think since then it has kind of proven its value, which is like, you look at somebody like Frank, who can then like draw something, post a picture of it on Nerdcrawler, and then make it last for a week, so he gets a lot of eyes on it. And then the bidding happens, and then both Whatnot and Nerdcrawler add time when a bid comes in, so that you can continue to extend the auction. But I had 30 seconds. I think they had closer to like 5 seconds. And I'd started actually with their 5 seconds, and somebody commented, "It's way too fast. Like, I need more time to think." So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
get 30 seconds." And yeah, you look at Frank. He now is commanding, I think, some of his pieces. What his most recent Deja Thor sketch cover sold for like 4,000.
Yeah, that was
Um,
awesome.
right, and then he's seeing the effects of that too. Even on the Whatnot side, he's continuing to earn more too, right? And I think for him that is net better. And the thing I'll also say then to the collectors too, because there's probably a thought of like, well, what about like the collector? I think one of the things that Nerdcrawler is doing is allowing Frank to earn the true value of his art in a way that maybe he couldn't have before. And I think about like Adam Hughes in particular, because I was a huge Adam Hughes fan in college, and it was like he would do the thing where I was like, run to his table, get on the list, and then he'll pick, right? But time and time again, he would pick, he'd draw the thing, and then it would go up on eBay like in 2 days.
Yep.
That's a huge bummer for
Yeah.
him, right? Because he's doing this in
Yeah,
these
you think
shows.
you're doing a personal piece for
Yeah,
somebody who
200
loves
bucks
your
it resells
work,
for
and
like 2,000,
yeah, and they're
right?
just wanting to go and flip it.
Right, and like that's not great. And so then now at least Frank can try all kinds of stuff. Like he would do like remarks like at a lower price point. He can do higher price point things. You look at somebody like Sabine, she's done some head sketches, she's done some like more robust things. Like people can try different things, and with the marketplace approach, it's like it's just there and you can bid. But ultimately, like I believe if artists are able to earn more, then they'll continue to do it, right? Like part of the whole thing is like we need artists to earn a livable wage so that they can continue to make
Yeah,
their art.
for
And so
sure.
yeah,
We all benefit. We
yeah,
all
right,
benefit from that.
yeah,
Um, Switching gears a tiny bit, staying focused on Nerdcrawler, I've also noticed what I think is really cool is you allow like people like myself to get an account on there and be able to put my original art that I own and have a gallery. You know, I collect a lot of Ryan Otley stuff, and I put a few, a small percentage of the pages I have, I put some pictures up there and have a gallery. And you actually allow for people like myself, like a private collector, to be able to potentially sell and accept offers. Like you have a really cool feature where, I can choose something in my gallery. I can say, yeah, I might be interested in selling this, and I can put a minimum amount I would accept and that kind of thing. Like I started getting offers right away on a couple of those. It was funny. Like people were messaging me like, would you take this much? So I thought that was really special too. Like it's not just, I think it's important for people to know it's not just for artists to put their stuff on there. Like regular people like myself can get on there and potentially buy and sell, original artwork for
yeah,
the original art collectors. That's really cool.
yeah. And by doing like building that out was really important to me too, because the other pain point I was seeing in the Facebook groups was scam. Like this is such a tough hobby and a one-on-one where like if you were to ship a piece of original art and then someone just walks with it or something like that would be awful. And so I was like, there has to be a better way for us to also facilitate those transactions. And then as a marketplace, you have to take a cut to continue to keep your business alive. Like my server costs continue to rise as it gets bigger.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I'm going to take a cut, it has to be value. And so that's where like I had recently just bought a house and I was like, escrow. And there really was not a great escrow service in the original art space. And so, yes, where now collectors can put their pieces up for offer or for view, or for sale. And then someone can purchase it through a regular checkout flow that we expect from any other website like Etsy, taking inspiration from them. But then the funds are stored in escrow. So the buyer's funds are held. The seller will then ship the piece. And then when the buyer receives it, they have up to 48 hours to confirm if it's arrived safely. If I don't hear from them or they're like, yep, it looks great, then the seller gets their funds. And so what that does, it just creates so much more trust, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm about to, like, one of the most fascinating transactions was I had launched escrow and a guy, and like Frank was making money. And so like there was a lot of trust in the platform, but it was still growing. And a guy from London was like, well, I have some jock pages and I have a Jim Lee. And like, I'm trying to like buy something big. So he put a Jim Lee up for like 6,000, but the minimum offer I think was like 5. And someone that day put 5,000. And he
Yeah.
was like, whoa, that's a lot of money. How's this going to actually work? Because like I only have this
Yeah.
one Jim Lee and I would like my $5,000, but how's it going to work?
Need
And I
some
remember just,
assurances, right?
dude,
Got to have some kind of assurance there.
it was so stressful, but like it worked. Like we literally, I worked hand in hand with both of them. And made the transaction work, and I learned so much about the product in the meantime, but it was like, that's the magic, right? Like people have these amazing things that they want to sell, but it's incredibly precious. And having an escrow service that makes that work is great. Because I'm sure we've all seen
Yeah.
posts, if you're a collector, of like, it got damaged, this is a scam, it's actually a print. Like, oh, I think around
Yeah.
that time someone had spent like $8,000 on a Charles Schultz print on eBay, and they
Yep.
were like, this is awful. And I was
And
like,
it
yeah, there has to be a
happens
better way to
way
do this.
more often than we would like to believe.
Yeah. And so I guess then I'll add then on that, like, one of the things that makes Nerdcrawl interesting too is like verification, right? So I verify anybody who lists an auction to make sure that they're legit. Artists and certainly premium or iconic artists have like a little badge, but everyone who lists an auction has verified that, like, this is my collection, this is my house. Um, these are the pieces in my wall, because that matters. I think that really
Yes.
matters if we're going to be doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, especially when you're talking about, some of the high dollar values we're talking about here, like some of these invincible pages now, especially since like I look at the price I paid for on them and I'm like, holy cow, you couldn't even touch like a basic invincible page for this much nowadays. Like, Ryan was selling all that stuff for so cheap. Like, you could go to a con and I'd have 4 or 5 pages I would get from him, just with the money I had taken. And now, like, it bums me out a little bit, like, especially after Ryan got on Spider-Man. I'm like, dang it, now I can't afford any of his stuff. Like, it's
Yeah.
all, but in the same time, it makes me very happy for him. So
Right.
it's a double-edged sword because I'm like, well, it's good to see him being recognized and actually making the money he should be making now.
Yeah.
And I think that coincides with what you're saying about Nerdcrawler. Like, it's getting these artists more appreciation and actually receiving, some of the value that the work that they're putting out is worth. So I think
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think part of it is like the collector challenge, I don't know, whatever we want to call it, opportunity, is like, it's kind of like stocks, right? It's like, it's stocks with an emotional tie. Like,
Yeah.
I love Jim Lee's work, right? I was able to get a head sketch from Jim Lee back in 2007, right? And I had $50. I wonder what I could have maybe gotten back then. I don't know. But now you look and he's able to command a very high price for anybody interested. Check out
Much,
Albert
much
Moy.
higher, much
Much
higher
higher than
than
free.
$50
Yeah, much higher than
or
50
for,
bucks.
or free.
Right. But you also then are like, I think that makes you love the ones you have more, or makes you like, okay, I'm gonna go try to find something that I can
Yeah.
own. Like, well, the one that I still kick myself for is like Mark Brooks. I remember Mark Brooks had just done his like beautiful Rogue where she's holding the skull. I think it was like
Mm-hmm.
2008, or I don't
I
know when it
remember
was.
that one.
Right, and it was like $100 for a commission from it at like WonderCon, and I just spent my last $100 on like something else. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, maybe like another time. And then time didn't come. And now it's like, I think he sold, I think I saw a cover in his book, like Captain Marvel on it from Secret Wars or something, for like $9,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, one, congrats to you. but two, damn, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I wish I had $100. And yeah.
Yeah, his stuff really blew up.
Oh my God. And he's
Yeah.
incredible. He's incredible with those pens. I remember learning about Copic markers from him
Yeah.
because he talks so highly of them. And it's just like, man, this guy can do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, him and Adam Hughes and all those guys, like they're like masters with the Copics. It's
Yeah.
crazy to watch them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I'm
it's
like, it's all
it's
gray. And it's
very
like, no. Yeah.
yeah,
Amazing.
no, not just gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man. So speaking of original art, like what are some of your favorite pieces that you have in your own personal collection now? Are you continuing to accumulate pieces of original art for your own personal collection?
Yeah. I think this business might be a net negative for my bank account because you
That's
just see
kind
so much
of
beautiful
kind of
stuff
what
on
I
really
was
cheap listings.
alluding to. Like
Yeah.
I almost wonder if you didn't create this to give yourself an avenue to be able to score
Yeah.
some awesome
Exactly.
pieces.
Yeah, I'll quickly just I think I can just pan this over. Let me see.
Yeah,
So we'll go this way. So
there we go.
uh the ones that I think I'll just share some personal stories for
Yeah, and I
is
always encourage people
yeah,
too, like,
yeah,
this podcast is both audio and video,
yeah, yeah.
so people can watch this on YouTube once it's up, and those who are just listening on the audio version right now, I would definitely encourage you to hop on to the YouTube and check out this amazing original artwork that he's showing us right now.
Thank you. Yeah. Right, I forget auditory medium. So I will explain the pieces as well.
Yeah, be very
Or
descriptive.
yeah. Or feel free to check out nerdcrawler.com/du/Chris. That's my
There you
online
go.
gallery as well on Nerdcrawler. The one that I'm pointing to right now is a Salvador Larroca piece, published splash page from Extreme X-Men, where Gambit and Rogue have a Varus's sword stabbed through them. Vargas, I think. I remember having it as a background, and then Al Anthony's comic book art had it in the drop, and this was in 2011. So I was working like a college job, making like $9 an hour. But I think the page at the time was like $400. So it was a decent amount of money. But I was like, I'm gonna buy this one, and that was like a graduation gift for myself. I still love it. It's one of my favorites, especially given X-Men the Animated Series and how that played out. I'm so happy
Yeah.
I had that page. The far left, this one right here, this Power Goal right here. It's a Power Goal by Frank Cho. It is massive. It's 15 by 20, and that actually is the first big piece that Frank sold on Nerdcrawler. And the
Oh
funny
man.
story there and how I ended up with it is at the time, Nerdcrawler didn't have a lot of checks and balances to verify a bid. And so, and I wanted to make bidding easier. So I had added this way to slide to bid. And I added that in because people would click on accident and then email me and say I made a bad bid. So I made
Oh.
the slide to bid. So you have to hold the button and slide it all the way across. And I stupidly bid on the Frank piece that at the time was like a very large, many thousands of dollars. But I was like, I just got to test it. And then my wife goes like, why didn't you just make a fake auction and test it there? And I
Right.
was like, well, that's a great idea. But I
Yeah.
can't delete the bid now because it's the sanctity of the auction. And at the time, Frank and I were not as close as we are now.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Frank's pieces on Heritage are selling for a lot. So I'm pretty sure I'll get outbid. And then the auction counted down and then it ended. And I
Oh
was
man.
like, oh, shoot. So I
You're
told
like,
my wife, I was like,
honey,
I
and
think
you're
I'm,
like, honey, I pretty much have to now. I
yeah,
can't I can't
yeah,
ruin this relationship
I
I've
can't.
developed with Frank here.
Right,
It's a
right.
budding relationship. We're just in the
Yeah.
early stage.
So then I emailed the second guy, yeah, basically I was like, I have to just do this. And she's like, well, you know
Yeah.
what? This might just be that funny story. So shout out to my
Yeah.
wife, incredibly supportive. But then I bought it. It came. It's beautiful. Even she was like, this is pretty epic.
Is
And
that the
then
one on the far side above your stationary bike?
correct.
The
Yeah,
the
it's the
bigger
Power Girl
frame?
and the big
There
one
we
right
go.
over here. Yep,
Yep,
right
yep.
there.
Got it.
Um, and that set off everything. Right. That small, not small. That investment built that relationship where Frank was like, okay, it works. And then him continuing to list allowed me to fix all those bugs. And through that investment, now a sketch cover is selling for the same amount as that one piece that he first started with. And so I think that piece is particularly special because no matter what happens, like that, without that one piece and actually making the call to pay for it and all that stuff, I'm not here. I'm certainly not here because I think Frank
Yeah.
walks away or he's like, I don't know, it didn't really work. But yeah, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, that definitely had to play a part in building that trust as
Yeah,
well, you know.
yeah,
Like you doing that and then following through and making the purchase and everything. Like you could have said, "Oh, it was an accident. I'm sorry. I'm gonna cancel it," but you didn't, and
right.
he probably would have walked. And
Yeah, and then he doesn't bring
yeah,
Sabine, and he doesn't bring all these amazing people that have got to work with Sensen. Um, yeah, so that I think piece will always be very special. And then I have a Frank show because I remember. Sorry, quick story time. Was
oh please, if it's
uh,
a Frank, is it a Frank Cho story?
it
I'm
is.
good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, that con in 2007, where actually, if you go to nerdcrawler.com/about, there's 2 photos from that convention where I met Frank and Jim Lee. And I remember Frank was like, I think I asked him, "Can you draw a rogue?" And he was like, "Oh no, like I don't do that like at conventions like this." And I was like, "Well, can you just draw like something?" And or like, I don't even think I said something. I was like, "Oh, I'll just take like Oscar, like your dog from Liberty Meadows." And he's like, "Okay, like
Yeah.
that's chill." So because he drew that, because he knew like, he does a quick session of Rogue, it could go on eBay, and then it would be, it's like that
Yep.
sucks. And I was like, well, someday I'll get a real piece from Frank. And so that was 2007. So 17 years later. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the
Now we're
journey of
here.
how long it takes to get a show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love it though, man. Everything there, all these connections, all these things work out for a reason, like very serendipitous and really cool to see the success you're having. I was thinking it might be cool if I screen share and pull up the site. Would you
yeah.
be
Sure.
cool with me doing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a little screen share here, and then that way when people are watching the video version, we can see. All right. So you'll be able to see it. I'm going to screen share it. It should pop up for you. Let me pull this up. Sharing this. There we go. You able to see that?
I think it's coming in. Yep. Oh, see, so this is one of the things I certainly need to work on is browser compatibility. So we're gonna do a quick. This is what founders will have to do all the time if you're gonna build a product. What browser are you on,
I am on Chrome,
and what operating system?
Windows.
Windows. Okay, helpful.
Yep.
So the text is supposed to be black. It's not supposed to be gray like that.
Oh,
So
right
I'm gonna
here.
now go file a bug to fix it. Basically, all of the
Ah, there
text.
you go. See, I'm helping you.
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
are
even
helping.
intend, but I.
Yeah,
All right,
Windows
I
Chrome.
expect a kickback after
Oh,
this.
definitely. Windows Chrome text is gray. But yeah,
Yep.
so that's really important, right? Is like being able to do these and then seeing what other people see
Yeah,
is really cool.
absolutely.
Yeah.
See what everybody else can see, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm scrolling down, we can see some of these pieces. Like Koi has a lot of pieces on here right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one
Yeah,
really stood out to me. The Batman Who Laughs one that he just put up.
It's not. Oh, you're applying dark mode too, huh?
Yes.
Yep.
That might have
That's
something
why.
to do with. Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah,
Cool.
seeing his ink work, because usually you see a lot of his pencil work, and this is
Mhm.
ink, pencil and ink.
Yeah.
Really awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. For anyone who's trying to build software products, dark mode is challenging,
Yeah,
and
see,
it's like
I
being a
did that
wacko.
I did that on purpose, just to give you a startle.
Oh yeah.
Oh, look at all these great reviews.
Yeah, that has been incredibly rewarding. Like a big part
That's
of it
amazing.
is right. You start with one, so you start with the top left with Frank, but then slowly but
Yep,
surely, yeah,
yep. Word of mouth, man.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can already see it's spreading like wildfire. That's so
Thank you.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then
I
you
actually
said
felt
in
like I
the
knew. I felt like I knew maybe I was hitting it when you reached out for this podcast.
oh, that's awesome.
You're
Yeah.
like, okay, people want to hear what I have to talk about. That's nice.
Yeah, and this podcast, man, I wanted this to be something, kind of how you were talking with with the wanting to be able to give exposure to like not necessarily like the big name artists or anything, like you have other people, you're shining a spotlight on these up and coming things and everything. Like I saw this and I was like, man, this people need to know about this. This is amazing.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, it's nerdcrawler.com. Um, it's an amazing site, like really easy to use. That's something that I think is very important, that it's not confusing. A lot of people are kind of technologically challenged, and some of these auction sites can be pretty crazy. You get on and you lose your way pretty quick.
Yeah. And then just currently not dark mode friendly, but I will work on it this week.
Yeah, don't use dark mode
Yeah.
like me, guys. No, actually, I think it still looks on my end. It looks great. Like I can
Okay.
read everything pretty good, and yeah, sweet. So this is just a little brief preview for anybody, and there's that
Yeah. That's the
Deja
one.
Torres,
Yeah.
a bunch of
Yeah.
Frank
So it's pretty
stuff
wild
here.
that that Power Girl pinup that I
Is
own
this
was
this is the
started.
one that you own right here, right?
Correct. And then
Yeah,
now Frank is getting almost the same for a sketch cover.
yeah. And I love
Yeah.
this
Like
zoom feature here where you can scroll over it and see all the detail that he put in there.
that was Koi. So Koi joined and asked, "Hey, it would be nice if." I feel like a lot
Yeah,
of the product is built on like it would be nice if, because you realize like you just gotta make them happy, like you make them
right.
as happy as possible.
And how big did you say this piece is?
15 by 20, I believe, or no,
Wow.
maybe I think 15 by 24. I think it's in the description if you scroll down. Click the X and scroll down. Yes, 15 by
Auction
20.
details. Yeah. Yeah, Frank likes to draw like double up. Like he'll draw like really big.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
I
goes,
yeah,
to my knowledge, he goes straight to the board, which is crazy.
yeah.
Like a lot of
Frank,
artists don't like to draw that big. They will do a smaller thumbnail and blow it up and print it out on the board and work from there. Like it's a whole other level when
yeah.
people can just go to that
I
board
will.
straight away.
I'll give him a plug. Yeah, you guys should definitely follow him on YouTube. He'll
Yeah.
drop videos, I think, once or twice a week, and you just get to learn from him on like how his process is, and they're awesome.
All right, I just stopped the share. I just wanted to give people a tease. I also wanted to encourage people to get over there and actually check out the site for themselves. And the other thing, I don't have the ability to show it here, is the mobile version of the site is very smooth too. Like it's
Thank you.
very easy to use and everything. Like I've actually, I'll be honest with you, I think this might be the first time I've visited the site on a regular browser. It's usually been from my phone, like all my uploading of my art and everything was straight from my phone. So that's very important nowadays, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I think 60 to 70% of the traffic is mobile, with the lion's share coming from social. So by social, I mean like Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever,
Yeah,
etc.
it'll always be Twitter to
Yeah,
me.
it always
I
is going to be
can't,
Twitter.
I can't, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, the artist
And
formerly known as Twitter.
yeah. And then a mobile app, we're working on an iOS app. So shout out to
Okay.
my best man, Shane, who is trying to find time in between raising two kids to also build an app. Yeah.
Nice. And is there anything different that the app will be able to do? Do you have some ideas that of anything? Are you going to pretty much try to keep it very similar to the functionality that's already in place?
I think we're going to keep it similar. I think the biggest gap is notifications, though. So, like, one of the things I got feedback on from a happy seller was like, there's still a lot of notification, like email, because right
Right.
now email is the only way I can like let you know about certain moments. But yeah, so I think notifications letting you know when an auction is happening, when an auction you're following is ending, likes, things like that would be really helpful, because I feel like y'all could use fewer emails, but all
Yeah.
I got is
Yeah.
emails right now. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be neat to have, yeah, like you said, being able to have your notifications pop up for those of us that want to do that, especially if you're like tracking your bids and making
Right.
sure you're not getting outbid and that type of thing, being able to
Yeah.
just have it quickly pop up on your phone would definitely be an asset for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And like mobile web, like you said, works pretty well, but like until there's an app, I won't be able to do that stuff. And, but yeah.
Chris, man,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing your time with me today. I feel like we could probably do like several of these and not even scratch the surface. If you would be willing to come back on one day, I would love to have you back on. Maybe we can get you back on here once the app is ready to roll out and get an announcement out and let everybody know. Wanted to give you an opportunity here in the wrap-up process to share any, vital information regarding things you have upcoming in the works, as well as your social media and everything where people can view the site, your Instagram. Like, I always like to give an opportunity. I always put all that in the show notes afterwards as well, just to make it convenient for everybody. But now's your time to have the spotlight and let everybody know what you got going on and what they should be looking for.
Yeah. So I would just say check out nerdcrawler.com. You can follow us on Instagram, because that's probably the main place that we're at right now. And definitely just make an account. Nerdcrawler.com. It is free to make an account. No monthly subscriptions required. If you're a seller or an artist and you're interested in selling, nerdcrawler.com/seller has all of the information you're going to need. What else? Oh, worth mentioning, likely we'll be heading to San Diego Comic-Con. I'm not going to have a booth or anything, but I'll be walking around. You'll spot me in a Nerdcrawler shirt. I would love to get something together for those of us who collect original comic art or are interested in original comic art. So feel free to reach out. Also, if you have any questions, definitely just email me at chris@nerdcrawler.com. That is my actual email. I read every email and I try to respond, as James has mentioned. Try to respond quickly as well.
Very quickly. Both Instagram and email.
Yeah.
Respond very quickly.
That's
rare. That's rare these days. People, those of us in the know, it's pretty rare to actually talk to the person behind the curtain, so to speak. I know people are always surprised when they contact my business and I email them or text them right back, or actually pick up the phone when somebody calls. They're like, "Oh, you're the actual person. Wow." Yeah. I called 4 other places and they never took my call, or I never got a call back. Yeah. I'm like, wow, it's definitely something that's I take for granted. That's kind of sad that it's surprising for people, but very common.
Agreed. I guess like my closing thought then on that would be, I built Nerdcrawler because like I believe like real people make real art, and in the face of like so much digital adoption and AI, it is, what we're finding is it's incredibly encouraging when a real person emails you back, picks up the phone, lets you know that, hey, they're working on it. A real person draws the thing and mails it to you. And like I need to hang it up, but I have a print that Frank added to that Power Go piece where he drew like, hey, Nerdcrawler, thanks for everything. And like that means so much to me, because again, it's humans helping humans. Like if we can just do more of that, I think we'll all be okay. Yeah.
Well, as far as everybody knows, this is actually us. This AI is getting out of control.
There are no deepfakes here.
No. Yeah, some of these videos I'm seeing, it's getting pretty crazy, and how good they're getting at, especially like the more your voice is out there, the more your image is out there. Like, it's getting pretty scary what can be done. But I assure all of you, this is Chris and I today, and it's just been a pleasure to chat with you. I hope to have you on again real soon, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I loved hanging out.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm going to play my outro. I always ask people to show their dance moves, but I don't really have any other than Raise the Roof and the fist bumping Jersey Shore style. All right, I'm going to hit this. Everyone, keep it nerdy. Until next time.
You start fist bumping here.
Yeah, there you go.
As you outro it out.
That's the easy one.
Probably some light music overplaying,
Yeah, Raise the Roof is good, Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Every now and again, somebody breaks out. Oh, what was that one called? I forget.
I can't remember. But we did it a lot, I feel like, in the 90s. I mean, all of our games were awful.
Get
I
the
cannot
shoulder
name.
movement, right? Get the shoulder movement going.
Shake,
Yeah.
shake.